Hunter Biden is back in the headlines. Louisville charges officer involved in Breonna Taylor shooting, 200,000 COVID death mark in the United States, and Attorney General Barr lists Portland, New York City, and Seattle as anarchist jurisdictions. All that and more on this episode of The Johnny Ray Show. Welcome and thank you for joining me on this episode of The Johnny Ray Show. We all know Hunter Biden has been in the news periodically, and I mean, let's be honest, between the Burisma deal making six figures monthly, not yearly, monthly, for a job that he had zero qualifications for besides the fact that his daddy is Joe Biden, between that and the having sexual relations with his brother's widow, and the snorting of cocaine with the crack addictions while knocking up the stripper at the Lonely Pony, or wherever she worked, he's now back in the news. Well, some news. Not the big news like CNN or MSNBC or any of them. They have yet to report on it as of this moment. But some news that actually reports news regardless of the biasy. Now, the Senate has released reports revealing that Obama and Biden both were made aware of how it looked having Hunter sitting on the board of a company ran by a corrupt oligarch in the Ukraine. There are even transactions, allegedly transactions, between Hunter and the wife of a Russian ex-mayor, I don't know, a Moscow mayor, for $3.5 million connected to the trafficking women in a prostitution ring. Okay? $3.5 million. In the midst of hashtag Save Our Children, Hunter is over in Russia and Ukraine buying trafficked women and young girls. Of course, the Biden camp blamed these breaking stories on Trump attempting to quote-unquote smear Biden during the election. I mean, 87 pages. That's a hell of a report just to bail out Trump. I mean, this is the same people who spent billions, with a B, billions of dollars in an investigation and impeachment for 3 years. I find it particularly telling that CNN, MSNBC, CBS, nobody is talking about it. It's almost like they're actively trying not to talk about this. Fox News and the New York Post are about the only big-name media outlets to mention it. Coincidence? Or partisan? I mean, Don Jr. was interrogated for like 10 hours because someone said that he was supposedly high on cocaine during his RNC speech, and that got 24-hour coverage for days. Yet, crack binge Biden is allowed to spend $3.5 million on trafficked prostitutes in Russia and nothing. I mean, I'm not expecting people like Don, I'm only here because I'm black and gay lemon, or Lesser Cuomo to do a 10-minute rant on CNN like they do for straight men, Christians, and Trump supporters. But Jesus Christ, at least throw it on the chyron or mention it in passing. Attempt to not appear completely biased, you pieces of human garbage. Now, before I get on to the next story, and I'll forget, I get sidetracked. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to click the little bell so you're notified every time a new episode airs. I will soon be doing some exclusive stuff for YouTube subscribers only, so you won't want to miss out on all the uncut, unfiltered, uncensored things that I may have. Now, in other news, Louisville started blockading their downtown area yesterday in anticipation of quote-unquote civil unrest following the impeding announcement in the Breonna Taylor case. The city encouraged businesses to close and teachers to work from home while the courthouse boarded up their windows. This began yesterday morning and the announcement was made earlier this morning. The grand jury indicted former Louisville detective Brett Hankinson one of the officers that served the no-knock warrant at the Breonna Taylor residence with first-degree wanton endangerment. Okay? This was because the detective, quote-unquote, fired blindly through a wall and or doorway, and I believe it said three, may have been a different number, but I believe they said 3 bullets entered a nearby apartment where a supposed pregnant woman, her husband, and child were home.
Evidence shows that officers both knocked and announced their presence at the apartment. The officers' statements about their announcement are corroborated by an independent witness who was near in a proximity to apartment 4. In other words, the warrant was not served as a no-knock warrant. When officers were unable to get anyone to answer or open the door to apartment 4, the decision was made to breach the door. After breaching the door, Sergeant Mattingly was the first and only officer to enter the residence. Sergeant Mattingly identified 2 individuals standing beside one another at the end of the hall, a male and a female. In his statement, he says that the male was holding a gun, arms extended, in a shooting stance. Sergeant Mattingly saw the man's gun fire, heard a boom, and immediately knew he was shot as a result of feeling heat in his upper thigh. Kenneth Walker fired the shot that hit Sergeant Mattingly, and there is no evidence to support that Sergeant Mattingly was hit by friendly fire from other officers. Mr. Walker admitted that he fired 1 shot and was the first to shoot. In addition to all the testimony, the ballistics report shows that the round that struck Sergeant Mattingly was fired from a 9mm handgun. The LMPD officers fired 40 caliber handguns. Sergeant Mattingly returned fire down the hallway. Mattingly fired 6 shots. Almost simultaneously, Detective Cosgrove, also in the doorway, shot 16 times. This all took place in a matter of seconds. In total, 6 bullets struck Ms. Taylor. Medical evidence obtained by our team indicates that only 1 shot was fatal. Further medical evidence shows that Ms. Taylor would have died from the fatal shot within a few seconds to 2 minutes after being struck. Detective Hankinson fired his weapon 10 times, including from an outside sliding glass door and through a bedroom window. Some bullets traveled through apartment 4 and into apartment 3 before some exited that apartment. At the time, 3 residents of apartment 3 were at home, including a male, a pregnant female, and a child. There is no conclusive evidence that any bullets fired from Detective Hankinson's weapon struck Ms. Taylor. The KSP ballistics analysis did not identify which of the 3 officers fired the fatal shot. After receiving that information, I asked the FBI crime lab to conduct its own analysis to see if they reached the same results. The FBI ballistics analysis concluded the fatal shot was fired by Detective Cosgrove. Our office looked at both reports to determine if there were major differences in the procedures used by each lab that would have led the FBI. With a thorough and complete knowledge of all evidence collected in this case, lawyers with our Office of Special Prosecutions presented the findings of our independent investigation before a grand jury comprised of Jefferson County residents beginning on Monday and concluding today. While there are 6 possible homicide charges under Kentucky law, these charges are not applicable to the facts before us because our investigation showed, and the grand jury agreed, that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in the return of deadly fire after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. Let me state that again. According to Kentucky law, the use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death. The truth is now before us. The facts have been examined, and a grand jury comprised of our peers and fellow citizens has made a decision.
Now, it's no doubt, if you haven't figured it out by now, this indictment was purely to appease the masses of BLM rioters and mobs. In no world would or should an officer who's being fired at by any person, whether it criminal or not, be charged with endangerment for returning fire in a shootout situation. Especially since Kenneth Walker, Breonna's boyfriend, was shooting as well as arrested, and then he had the charges dropped. Now, Walker is now suing the Louisville Police Department. His story has been very inconsistent, if I do say so myself. I mean, to say the least, it's been very inconsistent. He said at one time they were watching TV, then he said they were asleep, then reports said that that Breonna was supposedly killed while she was sleeping in bed, but was dead in the hallway. One report says that they were fooling around at the time. Which is it? It doesn't matter what they were doing. He fired a gun, striking a police officer while they were serving a warrant. Okay? One neighbor from some reports has said to be corroborating that they announced themselves. The officers themselves said that they announced themselves even when they didn't have to, because that's what a no-knock warrant does. You don't have to knock, you don't have to announce yourself. That's what it is, by definition. You cannot shoot at the police, hitting one, and then sue them for doing what they were supposed to be doing. But in this case, in this Wario world land that we live in, you can. This entire indictment boils down to officials wanting to appease the mob mentality. Nothing more, nothing less. In no way should an officer be punished for returning fire that struck his colleague from an apartment where a known drug running has happened. Okay? It has been proven that packages had been delivered that contained drugs at that apartment. Whether it was a previous boyfriend, whether it was this boyfriend, that doesn't make a difference. The fact is that they had her name, car, address, date of birth, everything on this warrant. So it wasn't like they just were at the wrong place at the wrong time. It's not like they didn't have some sort of probable cause. You can't just go to a judge and say, hey, I need a warrant, and the judge go, okay. It just doesn't happen. Okay? I will not debate this because it's stupid, it's silly, and it's slightly offensive that a man who fired a weapon at cops, hitting one and resulting in his girlfriend's death, should have any right to attempt to receive a monetary or judiciary value from that situation. Period. Now, on to other news. The United States death toll from the COVID-19 has hit 200,000. Now, that should be shocking. That should be a solemn time. But it's not. You know why? Because the actual death toll is somewhere around 15,000, according to the CDC release, saying that only 6% of COVID deaths are only caused by the virus. The rest are comorbidity, and the vast majority of those are 2 or more underlying causes on top of the COVID. So, I'm not going to freak out by a virus that's killed roughly about 15,000 people itself, when cancer takes roughly 400,000 people a year. Alcohol-related deaths account for about 88,000 a year. Diabetes accounts for roughly 83,000 per 100,000 population. So, no, I'm not going to freak out. Is COVID real? Yes, it's a real thing. But is it a virus that's going to cause the dawn of the dead? No. A lot of people are playing the blame game, mainly liberals who have shown through the previous 6 months or so that they must have somebody to blame. If they can't have somebody to blame, then they riot and tear up cities. The way the media is perpetuating this virus is ridiculous. They have yet to show real true facts of the virus. With no other seasonal virus have they kept a running tally like they do with COVID. All you hear is the death numbers. They don't mention the downtrend in active cases, the number of people who got over it without dying, nothing. All they talk about is the ongoing death toll, which skews the numbers dramatically. That's not to mention the fact that they cannot get anything right. The CDC released a report claiming that COVID may be aerosol and not strictly respiratory droplets. Then they removed it, and the left is screaming that Trump is blocking real science by strong-arming the CDC. I mean, what in the actual crap are you even talking about? For the side that screams science, 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 they sure are morons when it comes to science. You see, that's how the scientific method works, dum-dums. You try things, and you see, oops, that's not it, and then you remove it from the trials. They released information saying COVID could be transmitted through aerosolization. Then removed it after they tested the theory and found it not to be accurate. The left have this crazy fascination that Donald Trump is in the lab, like currently in the lab right now. Like, listen, frankly, okay, I think we should test aerosol, not spit. Listen, spit, frankly, it's not the only way. I mean, they did this with the vaccine. They said that they trust scientists, but not Trump. Listen, people, Trump isn't down in the basement of the White House with a Bunsen burner and a beaker mixing up vaccines. Spoiler alert, that's what scientists do. So to say Trump is strong-arming the CDC is ridiculous, and the liberals of America eat it up because CNN and Brian, I swear I'm not gay, Stelter, tell them to. Okay? And finally, Attorney General Barr has just listed Portland, Seattle, and New York City as anarchist jurisdictions. He said they're jurisdictions permitting violence and the destruction of property. And he also said we cannot allow federal tax dollars to be wasted when the safety of the citizenry hangs in the balance. You know, he's absolutely right. President Trump initiated this when he spoke about defunding the cities that allowed BLM and Antifa rioters to burn and destroy their cities. And he's absolutely right. Why not let them fix it? Why should the federal government, who you blocked from stopping the violence, have to pay for your stupidity of allowing them to destroy their cities? Now, New York City Council Speaker Corey Johnson tweeted this: "The federal government must serve the people of this country, including New Yorkers. Cutting funding to New York City, one of the nation's most vital economic engines, is as dumb as it is cruel. We must fight this misguided attack from the Trump administration." Okay. Governor Cuomo said in a teleconference, "You can't bully New Yorkers. We just don't get bullied." And you know, it's funny, because all three cities have had such a great track record for violence. I mean, Seattle allowed Antifa to siege half their city with Chop, or Chaz Chop, whatever it was called. Portland has had violent riots for 150 days straight now, or something like that. And New York City defunded half of their police, and their violent crimes went up 300% over the weekend. Yeah, you guys aren't an anarchist wet dream, are ya? Notice who's not on the list? Any Republican-ran city. You notice who else isn't on the list? Cities that contain the riots and shut them down. I mean, for Christ's sake, even Gangster's Paradise itself, Chicago, isn't here because they didn't allow thugs to riot their city. No more than usual, anyway. I think, personally, this is a great thing. New York City, Seattle, and Portland allowed BLM and Antifa to tear up all their stuff. Let them fix it. Let BLM go in and clean up the damage. Clean up the damage they caused. Honest to God, show me BLM helping anything. Show me BLM cleaning up a city. I ain't seen it, and I don't think anybody can show it to me. I've seen videos of them tearing things down. I've seen videos of them looting the targets. I've seen videos of them Molotov cocktailing the police cruisers. I've never once seen BLM removing graffiti off of the streets. I've never once seen a picture or a video of BLM taking some of that money that they've been given, that they've been donated, and helping out the black community. Because this isn't about Black Lives Mattering. This is about politics. It's political. It always has been, and it always will be, no matter what you try and tell people. Now, I know the media report that protests are 90% peaceful, but in whose world is 90% peaceful a good thing? The Constitution says peacefully assemble, not 90% peaceful and 10% burn the world down. Now, before I go, I'm going to do some honorable mentions and some dishonorable mentions. My first honorable mention goes to Mitt Romney. Now, I know Mitt is probably the last person I'd ever say honorable and his name in the same sentence. And he's still the biggest asshat in the Senate. But he did say he'd support a vote on the vacant Supreme Court justice seat, which is the right thing to do.
You guys don't get too close. I'll take the mask off so you can hear me a little more distinctly. I've had the opportunity now to speak with a number of my colleagues, actually on both sides of the aisle, reached my decision, and obviously communicated that this morning. So if you have any questions, happy to respond.
I know a lot of people have argued for and against it in the last few days. Mostly against it, but it was RBG's dying wish. First off, allegedly, okay? There's still no proof of that. It's literally secondhand statements from her granddaughter, okay? And secondly, this isn't the Make-A-Wish Foundation, okay? John Cena isn't here to grant it, and honestly, that does sadden me. A little more than the fact that there's a vacancy or that RBG died, okay? That saddens me because I miss John Cena a heck of a lot more than I miss RBG. I gotta tell you, this is the stupidest argument, okay? It was her dying wish. And before I go too far, I forgot the question of the day. So here it is. Everyone who wants to grant the alleged dying wish of RBG and not fill the vacancy, the question is, would you hold that same outlook in 2016 had Justice Scalia's dying wish had been to abolish Roe v. Wade? Would you have still held that particular outlook? I don't think you would, but tell me down in the comments. Comment down below, tweet me at jray918, or comment on Facebook, The Johnny Ray Show, using the hashtag The Johnny Ray Show. I want to know what you think. If you would hold those same views back in 2016, if Justice Scalia's his death wish, his on his deathbed death wish was to abolish Roe v. Wade, would you still hold that same outlook? And now, the dishonorable mention goes to Glamour Magazine's article. And really, this isn't the first time. This is just a more ridiculous time. The article says that Friends, the television show Friends, is being reimagined with an all-black cast. In the good words of my friend, OMG. Now, these rumors happened a few months back when it was said that the Golden Girls was doing this as well, and it ended up being some sort of like Zoom table read or something like that with all black under 40s cast, which looked more like the midlife girls than the Golden Girls, but I digress. This time, it's with friends, and it looks like Sterling K. Brown, Gabrielle Union's supposed to be involved, and a Uzo Aduba, I don't know who that is, playing parts. My question is, why is it okay when they take and culturally appropriate? Because that's really all this is cultural appropriation for black on white. They culturally appropriate a predominantly white TV show or movie to an all-black cast. But if I merely mention a white Black Panther, it's President Obama. Now, Sterling Brown is said to play Ross, who is the neurotic Ross Geller. Uzo Aduba will play Phoebe, the kind of ditzy one. Ryan Bathy, I don't know how to say it, will play Rachel. Aisha Hines will be taking on the role of Monica. Kendrick Sampson will be the ever-lovable Joey Tribbiani. And Jeremy Pope will play Chandler. Now, this is the most ridiculous, not because it's taking a white show and making it black, because honestly, I don't really care. I mean, I would just simply watch the reruns of Friends. But the reason this is so absurd is because they have an all-black Friends cast. It's called Living Single. It starred 6 black people playing characters almost exactly like the Friends characters. I mean, it aired for 5 damn seasons. The plot is almost identical to Friends. All this is the woke left and the black community as a whole attempting to take a predominantly white show that had fairly great success and ride the coattails of it into its own success. I've never understood why the black community would need to take and quote-unquote reimagine a cast as all black. They've done it quite a few times, and it gets more and more ridiculous as time goes on. They did it with Annie, the movie. Changed it to an all-black cast. It bombed in theaters. Nobody cared for it. They did it with the Golden Girls thing and now with Friends. I mean, for Christ's sakes, the Oscars now force directors to have a certain percentage of talent be black or minority just to be nominated. How much more do you need as a community? Should all TV and movies just only have black and minority talent? Why do you need affirmative action in movies? I mean, in the 90s, plenty of black TV and movies were naturally made. Some of my favorite TV shows growing up were all black casts. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Sanford and Son, Family Matters, A Different World, The Cosby Show, Hanging with Mr. Cooper. The list goes on and on. I mean, could you imagine someone, quote-unquote, reimagining Family Matters with an all-white cast of actors? It would be anarchy in the streets. It would be a Twitter storm of hashtags. But when the black community does it, it's A-okay. Ugh. The stupidity has gone off of the charts with this type of stuff. And listen, that's all the time that I have for tonight. Thank you for joining me, and don't forget to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, anywhere audio podcasts are available. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. You won't want to miss all the upcoming exclusive content available specifically for YouTube subscribers. Until Friday, good night, and God bless.